Hi everyone, welcome to our weekly Q&A session, and today it is my pleasure to welcome here our coach Daniel. So Daniel, it's really nice to see you, meet you again, and so how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Always nice to be here, and looking forward to getting a chance to, answer questions from the community, which is always fun.
Okay, absolutely. So we can start right in, and we have a first question, which is from JNK. Hi, wondering your thoughts on someone with insomnia purchasing an Aura ring. Thank you. This is quite a common question, and what do you think, Daniel, or what is our take?
Yeah. So, thanks, Jackie, for the question. And when I hear this, I'm like, this sounds like it's going to lead to more struggle. That's the first thing I
Mm,
hear. The question is kind of like, what do you think of somebody with insomnia purchasing an Aura ring? And for those in the community who don't know what an Aura ring is, it's essentially like a form of tracker that you wear as a ring, and it
mhm.
checks. I bet it checks like heart rate and maybe movement, other things, but it also tracks your sleep and supposedly tracks like your REM sleep and deep sleep and things like that. Now, the intent with purchasing this ring, if you have insomnia, is surely to track your sleep, and it's very something that's very natural to do, because when we're struggling with sleep, we have the sense that something has been lost. We have lost something. We don't have something that we had before. We used to sleep well, but now we no longer have that. Something is happening that we have kind of no control over. We lost control over it. And to get a sense of control, the first thing we often do is we try to manage it, or to track it, to monitor it, to get some numerical evidence of what's happening, right? And the idea there is that, oh, if I understand what's happening, if I track it, then I can do this intervention, and then I can make sure I get the outcome I want, the results I want. That's kind of the idea behind getting an Aura ring. And it can sound kind of like, oh, that sounds like kind of logical. But the thing is that sleep is a passive, effortless process. It happens automatically by itself when we're not trying to achieve it. And when we start using a ring like that and we start looking at data, it's always going to lead to more struggle. Because if the ring tells us, for example, oh, you actually slept really well last night, then we're going to be like, how did I do that? Was it because I didn't have porridge? Was it because I used that pajama? Was it that? And then we're going to try to replicate that. And then we're going to introduce more effort, and we're going to have more trouble sleeping, right? And if it then tells us, oh, you slept not good at all yesterday night, then we're going to be like, why did I not sleep well? Was it, did I exercise too much? Did I not take my supplement? And so you see, whatever that result is, it's going to lead us to performance anxiety, and it's going to lead us to having more of a struggle with sleep. So I think when we're struggling with sleep, it's really, really tricky to use an Oura ring. And my, and then the question sometimes can become like, so should anyone use an Oura ring? And I'm like, personally, I'm kind of like very skeptical. I'm like, I don't really see why you would ever want to track your
Mhm.
sleep, because my stance is like it's this passive effort. We sleep so well when we don't try to track it. Now, I'm sure there's many people in the world who track their sleep and sleep just fine and think it's maybe amusing, or like it's kind of like interesting, or like they like it. So of course, like, you know, that good for you. That's wonderful. But that was just a little extra. But I think I answered the question about like from JK there, and I hope it made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There is just one situation that I think it could be helpful, just in a very, really short period of time. It's, when people are unsure of, did I sleep, did I not sleep? And when I have this kind of like tracker and it shows like, ooh, I slept, they tend to believe it, and then they tend to have like this reassurance. So it gives them like this kind of good feeling, like, oh, I really did sleep, although I wasn't not so sure about it. But in the long run, I totally can see how it can lead to frustration and disappointment when we don't achieve like this perfect amount of sleep. Or I don't have enough REM sleep, or I don't have enough deep sleep, because it always gives you this message, or I don't know if you're ordering, but at least the sleep watch trackers, they say like, oh, you're going to feel tired today, you should catch up with sleep. And it's like, oh my goodness, I have to run and sleep now, right? So it can lead to a lot of pressure. So of course, JNK, it's really up to you. And this is our take on the Aura Ring and the sleep trackers in general. So another question is from TPA. So hi, Veronica and Daniel. Waking up nearly every night with anxiety, try to relax and allow, and then I read a book. If I get tired, is it okay to put the book aside, or would I encourage effort? So what do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, firstly, I want to say it's a very insightful question. So TPA sees that TPA does not think it's like does not say like why am I waking up with anxiety, or why is this happening, but rather understands that okay, I'm kind of like I'm taking liberty to translate a lot, but it seems to be that TPA understands that okay, I've had some concerns around my sleep, and when not sleeping has become a bit of a threat for us, for our brain, then waking up in itself can be a little bit alerting to us, and we can be a little bit anxious around that. And TPA sees that okay, this is kind of normal and typical, nothing strange going on. And not only that, but TPA also understands that I want to just allow this. I don't want to try to fight this, or kind of like I don't want to try to make myself calm. I don't want to try to make myself fall asleep. I don't want to try to antagonize the situation, but rather I pick up a book and I just read it. And uh, and we see how this leads TPA to where they want to be. They're like reading a book to me does not sound like an effort. It does not sound like TPA doesn't sound like, oh, I have to read a book so I fall asleep. I have to read a book so I feel calm. But rather it's just like doing it for the sake of kind of allowance. This will make it easier for me. I'd like to read a book. And thanks to that, thanks to kind of the absence of effort, the absence of trying to make themselves calm, make themselves relax, make themselves sleep, actually that happens, right? The TPA is just reading a book because that feels kind of an easy, nice thing to do. And then TPA feels tired, right? And then comes, so now that leads us to the question, like, if I get tired, is it okay to put the book aside, or would I encourage effort? And to me, it's absolutely okay, right? It's totally fine. Like you read a book, you're feeling tired, and what you want to do in that situation is probably put the book aside, and that's totally fine. It's not an effort at all, because the intent with putting the book aside, it's not like you're going like, oh, I'm going to put the book aside now so that I sleep, right? It's not like that. You're just feeling tired, and you just feel like you want to put the book aside. It's kind of very, very natural. Now, the only thing I want to add to that is, if you put the book aside and then you start kind of feeling anxious again and nervous again, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean like, oh, I should have kept reading, or I should have done this or that. It just means like, okay, there's a little bit of that concern is kind of like surfacing again, and then you can pick up the book again and read, or you can just rest, or whatever you feel like. It's totally fine. But long story short, like, you start feeling tired, putting the book aside, it doesn't sound like an effort at all. It's like it just feels like you're just following what you naturally want to do. So sounds wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just a way how to befriend wakefulness. And of course, I guess TPA, you don't want to read a book forever. So totally you can just rest. And even like Daniel mentioned that there could some anxiety to resurface, but this is nothing really strange, because for a moment you could have been distracted by the book from what you were really feeling. And this is like when you're feeling the anxiety, it's just an invitation. Okay, anxiety, how can I be with you right now? And just because, like Daniel, you say, like, it is a signal from our brain, it's anxiety or our thoughts. It is our brain needs to know that we hear the signal. So just allowing it to be addressing the anxiety, approaching it with curiosity rather than fear. This is what leads to fading the anxiety over time. Of course, expecting the anxiety to go away like in the night, like right away, it would be too much. But really, it takes baby steps, patience, and really noticing, and the awareness is basically the way of healing. Cool. So let's look at another question from Ethan. So, hi guys. I have been having pretty bad anxiety about the thought of I will never sleep again, which leads to thoughts of if I don't sleep for, let's say, 6 days, I will die or I will go crazy. So, if you don't mind, I'll start because I also
Yeah.
had like exactly the same questions, same thoughts in my mind, and my insomnia started like with 2 weeks of not sleeping, like not obvious sleeping. It was, there must have been some sleep happening, but I totally was not aware of it. Although I could stay in bed like 12 hours, but I was sure I didn't sleep a wink. So first of all, I would challenge the idea that I don't sleep at all. And stumbling on the Sleep Course School channel, the first thing I have learned here is that sleep is inevitable. Of course, we might have all-nighters. Of course, we might have really uncomfortable moments, but our body will never give up on trying to sleep. So some sleep is definitely happening. And of course, I had really the same thoughts. It's I will die, that I will go crazy if I don't sleep. But it's it's more like our perception of the wakefulness rather the reality of it. Because like your favorite example, Daniel, is that if we take somebody from the street and keep this person awake for a certain period of time, like then and we would ask this person like, hey, how do you feel? Or like the next day, then this person goes like, yeah, I'm tired. Of course, like not sleeping make us tired, but it doesn't make us to feel like this is the end of the world. This is I'll go crazy, I will die because I didn't sleep. And you know when we understand this, it's really helpful just to see how much it is more about our emotions rather the situation that is kind of like creating it. So I would like to invite you, Ethan, to address your thoughts, to see them as a product of your scared brain. And I don't know how long have you been facing the insomnia, but in you I like with other people, they've been facing struggling with insomnia for a really long time, but they haven't gone crazy, they haven't died. So kind of like you can have yourself to you can inspire yourself on the channel to see the success stories, to learn from them, to get inspired, and just to see that you're in a way these thoughts are here to protect you, because your brain is trying to figure out a worst case scenario for you, so you can act, so you can do something about it, you can solve this problem. But the trick is, don't do anything about it, and this is the hardest part, I know. So I hope this was helpful. Anything to share, Daniel? We have quite a lot of questions coming in, so
Yeah. I guess we'll just very briefly say to Ethan, thanks for being here and asking us. And one thing that's really nice we see here is that Ethan says, I've been having pretty big anxiety about the thought, and then quote, which leads to the thought of I don't sleep, which is kind of like identifying these are just thoughts. Like there's nothing true or permanent or predictable from, they're just thoughts, which is really nice. And the other thing I want to add to that is like, where do these thoughts come from? The thought, if I don't sleep for 5 years, I will die. Or these thoughts comes from like a brain that is in like a threatened state, a brain that senses that it is in some kind of danger, right? That's what produces these thoughts. And if we then think, oh, these thoughts are a threat, or we think of these thoughts as kind of threatening anxiety, then we can see that there's a loop here. Like we get worried about the thought, which leads to more of these thoughts, which makes us more worried about these thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. So the key here is, like you said, to see that these are just thoughts. We can have all kinds of thoughts. We all have all kinds of thoughts, and we see them as that. We don't really react to them, and things kind of fade out for us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And as you were speaking, I have clicked on another comment because it was exactly about the thought. So you've been answering it, and it was from Brett. The thing is, I'm struggling with these negative sleep thoughts. What if I don't sleep? What if this happens for many nights? What if I lose my job, house, and so on and so on? I think we have answered this with the previous comments, and we can move on.
Actually,
So,
there's one, if we go back to Brad, there's kind of a practical thing that we could add here, which is like, there's kind of this like predictive nature of these thoughts. Like, what if this happens? What if I lose my job? What if I lose my house, et cetera, et cetera? And one thing what we naturally want to do when we have that thought, what if I lose my job, I don't have that, is that we try to contradict that in our head. We like, no, that's not going to happen because of this, or I'm going to do this before that happens, or things of that nature, which can lead to this like inner struggle where like the brain goes like, kind of warns us, and then we like try to stop the warning, and then it's like, but this happens, that happens. So what actually can be more helpful is, as scary and paradoxical as this sounds, is to kind of play out that scenario in our mind. Like just imagining ourselves, we lost the job in our mind, we lost our house in our mind, and we can see that even so, we'll find a new way. We'll be okay, right? And we don't try to like counter the thoughts and stop them, but on the other hand, we kind of let them flow through and even imagine the worst case scenario like that. That can really help. So just a little, in addition to what you always just said, just one additional little practical thing there.
Okay, thank you so much. Right, another question is from Eugene. Hey guys, I've been suffering from hypnic jerks for almost a year now, and they cause severe insomnia. I understand the main idea that I need to stop fighting it and just accept it. But I can't seem to switch my mind into that mode. The very effort of trying to switch is already a kind of struggle, isn't it? I can't resolve this logical paradox. As a result, I end up lying awake at 4 a.m., frustrated, desperate, and twitching. So, what are your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, Eugene, hang in there. We can see from your messages that this is like you're in a very, very difficult place. But you've had one realization which is really, really helpful, and it's the big one around like around effort. That trying to stop the dirt, that is that effort that in fact keeps them going. And it's the same thing with all these like experiences that come from this like threatened state of the mind. Like if we try to stop anxiety, we have more anxiety. If we try to stop ourselves from being awake, we become more awake. If we try to stop the jerks, we have more jerks, etc. Right? But then if we can maybe go back to the previous message, Eugene said, but I can't seem to switch my mind into that mode, like kind of the acceptance mode, if you will. And that is true for all of us human beings. That the switch from like the threatened state of the mind to the unthreatened state of the mind is also something we cannot control, right? It's also something that happens effortlessly and passively. And trying to switch the mind into an accepting state of mind, that is another example of that effort. It's just like trying to stop the twitches, trying to stop the anxiety, trying to make ourselves feel calm or make ourselves be in a more accepting state of mind is effort. That is the kind of like the resistance that keeps the struggle going. And Eugene has actually pointed this out too. The very effort of trying to switch is already kind of struggle. Is it? Yes, it is. And then Eugene says, I can't resolve this logical paradox. And there we have it. Like, again, if you're intellectually trying to solve this logical paradox so that your mind goes into an acceptance state, so that this happens, that's also kind of like all this is part of like problem solving and the resistance. And I think what is more helpful is to, see that it is a paradox. Like we cannot think ourselves out of it. Like, and the kind of ultimate paradox here, like what this all boils to is actually like, I have this little thing behind me. I used to say like courage and kindness, which I think was really helpful. Now it says to understand nothing, because that's kind of like a message to myself, because I think that this journey, what the ultimate paradox here is that what we want to explain is nothing, And that's what Eugene wants to understand is essentially like, how do we do nothing? Like, how do we back off from trying, right? How do we do nothing? And that's so hard to explain, because as soon as we try to understand what nothing is or how we do nothing, then we're trying to do something, right? So it is like impossible to really solve this logical process, because none of us can truly like describe what nothing is, right? So and that can sound like unhelpful. Like Eugene can be like, oh, so how are you helping me now, Dan? Well, what are you talking about? But what I'm trying to say is that none of us can really truly solve this paradox, right? It cannot really be solved. I think it's almost impossible for you to fully understand like nothing or express what nothing is, right? But that can actually be really helpful, because that leads to a place where you're like, yeah, I can't solve this logical paradox. I don't have to solve this logical paradox. I don't need to solve this logical paradox. We don't need anything to have these twitches go away, to find ourselves feeling calm. It requires nothing. There's nothing. It doesn't need anything, and that can be like the insight that leads where we want to go. So, it became a little philosophical there, but you kind of almost need to, because there's no other way of expressing this.
Yeah, wow, this was really profound, and I can imagine like it needs a little time to really digest. For me, just regarding the hypnic jerks, like of course I experienced them as well, and what was helpful for me was just to understand that they are really a normal part of a falling asleep process. So this is really nothing strange or unusual, and the only difference, Eugene, right now is that you are a little bit more hyper-aroused and you are aware of them. So, and as long as you will see them as an obstacle to your sleep, like usually the process is like you're falling asleep, then you jerk, then you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to sleep right now because I jerked. And it's again about the way you think about this jerk. Like, as long as you see it as an obstacle, but not like something normal, something really everybody's experiencing, it's going to be a little bit challenging. So really, just changing the view and accepting in a way like I can't do anything about it, so rather if I can't fight it, so let's invite it in, right? I know it is really difficult to invite something that we hate so much. Like it is just the same like with anxiety, with wakefulness, with all these things that we are kind of really struggling with. It's about befriending it. And one thing that's also really, really helpful, also like one of the first things I learned here that's I really liked, one of the students said in his recovery video, and that a hypnic jerk is like a fly. By the time when it buzzes by your ear, and by the time you realize it, it's gone. So it's absolutely beyond your control. You can't do anything about it. So the only way is acceptance. So this is my 2 cents. Okay, thank you so much, guys, for your wonderful questions. And right, the next question would be from Catherine. Hello, Daniel and Veronika. I'm struggling with anxiety about not being able to fall asleep after having some decent nights. I'm also struggling with the thoughts of befriending wakefulness. And there is a follow-up. I was always told no screens at night by circuiting coaches, but it's something I really enjoy. And there are a few more. I worry about having an all-nighter because the hyperarousal starts after I doze off and want to go to sleep. Houdini effect. But I know I need to show my brain wakefulness is safe. And I am not the one who wants to read. I want to watch my shows. So, Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Well, Catherine, thanks for asking here. And I want to say that the fact that you have shows that you enjoy is very, very nice, And, I was just going to this, like, there is no evidence whatsoever. I don't think there's any truth whatsoever to the fact that, like, you should not have any screens at night. Like that, I think that's just untrue. And you can see evidence that all around you. Like personally, every single night I go to bed with my wife and we have a laptop and we watch a Netflix show with like the screen this close, and then we fall asleep. And then neither of us have any struggle with sleep. Like there's no evidence for that. So I think definitely consider the fact that you don't need to avoid screens to sleep well, and that can take a lot of pressure off. Now, other than that, I would say like the fear of an all-nighter, or the fear of the thoughts, or the fear of like waking up, or things of that nature. Like I think it's helpful to see like they're all just really the same thing. They're all actually just the fear of experiences of fear. So when we are scared, we may have kind of like warning thoughts, right? When we're scared, we stay awake. When we're scared, we may stay awake all night, right? These are all kind of normal things that happen when we're scared. And when we're scared of those things, then we can see like we're in this loop again. We're essentially like in this fear of fear situation where we're just scared about things that can happen because we're scared. And when we see that, we can be like, oh, so I'm just scared of things that happen when I'm scared. also there's actually no real threat to me, that I am actually perfectly safe. And it's actually, although I don't want to be up all night, nobody wants to, even if I had an all nighter and I was awake all night, that's actually nothing strange or unusual. Many of us are up all night because we want to study, or we want to, we were out with friends or something like that. And when we see it this way, we can see that again, there is no actual threat. There is no danger. I'm perfectly safe, even with thoughts, even with anxiety, even up all night. And that can lead to kind of this threatened state of the mind to really fade away and things get easier for us. But those kind of what are my immediate thoughts to Catherine there. And I hope that helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just add my 2 cents saying that, I mean, the Big Bang Theory, watching it at night, it was just the story of my recovery because I enjoyed so much. And especially the thing about it was that it didn't matter how tired I was, or angry, or upset, or disappointed, or anxious. They always said something funny that made me laugh. And with that, I was sending the signal to my brain like, hey, it's not so bad to be awake at night. So feel free to watch screens, Catherine, if you enjoyed. It's really wonderful that you find actually something to enjoy, because sometimes even that is a little bit difficult, right? So feel free, you have our blessing. Right. And another question is from Kani. And she's asking, I can figure out why some nights I have such physical anxiety and other nights I just clunk out. And it follows, about a year ago, I had a medical misdiagnosis, possible aneurysm. I woke up with double vision out of nowhere. I've always slept great. Turned out I was fine, all clear, but I have had shortness of breath. A functional neurologist said my shortness of breath is from an imbalance and has recommended exercises. Have you heard anything about this? I know sleep is your specialty, but thought I would ask. Anything to share on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say for two things. Firstly, no medical advice here to Kami or
Mhm.
anyone else. If you're concerned about your health, talk to your doctor. With that said, shortness of breath, extremely common when we feel anxious. It's one of the most common things when we're anxious. It's along with like palpitations, shortness of breath, or like breathing fast, or like feeling dizzy. Like it's very, very common, right? And so if we are told that we may have an aneurysm, and we then have shortness of breath, to me it's like, of course you have shortness of breath, because you just become like, your mind went into this threatened state. It thinks that there might be some danger here, and we prepare ourselves by having short shallow breathing, right? Completely normal. But then we can see how this loop can occur if we think like, oh, the shortness of breath is a threat. Then we're going to have more shortness of breath, because that happens when we're in the threatened state, right? And then that can become a loop of its own, right? So I think the key to me here is that understanding that a shortness of breath, completely normal, or it's nothing dangerous. It's just a physiological response to our brain feeling threatened, and B, like befriending that, like being willing to have shortness of breath, and be kind to ourselves, always be gentle and kind of us, and then this resolves. And to the other thing about the like I can't predict how one night I just conk out, one night I'm feeling like it's a mystery, right? It's like none of us can fully understand, why do I at this point have this thought which leads me to be anxious, or at this point have this other thought that leads me to not be anxious, right? It's a mystery. And the tricky thing becomes when we think like, oh, I have to figure it out. I have to figure out why I was so anxious this night and I was so like calm this night, so I can repeat that. Then we're in this process of like trying to have control, to manage, and we're going to be in this kind of performance anxiety space. But when we're like, there's no way to predict, there's no way to know, sometimes this happens, sometimes, then we are kind of like in a different path where we're like accepting uncertainty in life, accepting that there are many things we can predict, and trying less to predict them, trying less to achieve one or the other. And that leads to a really peaceful state of mind.
Perfect. Wonderful. Nothing to add from my side. And let's answer one last question that we have for today. And this is from Brad. What do you say is the biggest key to stop thinking, worrying about sleep? When it becomes a problem, it is hard not to give it so much focus, which is counterintuitive to what needs to happen. So, what do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, if I would pick something, it would be something along the lines of like, The key is to see that there is no problem, as in like, and when I say problem, I don't mean problem as in like, if somebody says like, oh, you're saying there's no problem, like my life is ruined because of this. No, I don't mean in that sense. I don't mean like you can have an incredibly difficult life situation due to insomnia and not sleeping, but problem as in kind of like danger, threat, something that needs solving. Because if you identify anything in your life as a problem, whether there's your your car not starting fast enough, or like you're not having hot water in your house, or like it's anything you identify as a problem, you will be thinking about it. You will be worrying about it. That's just a fact of life, right? But when something is no longer identified as a problem, that's when the thoughts about it will automatically fade away. And Alina has a very nice analogy here where she talks about if you think of ourselves going to the store and we're going to do some grocery shopping, right? And then we think like, oh my gosh, I might have forgotten the oven on at home, right? And at that point, our mind's going to be like, what if the oven is on? What if your house burns down? What if this happens? What if that happens? And we may just not be able to continue shopping. We may be like, oh, I'm going to go home and check this out, right? And if we in that scenario, when we're in the shopping center, like if we try to stop our thoughts there, if we try to not give them focus or just shift our attention, it's not going to work, because our mind's going to be, no, you got to think about this. This is a big problem. This is a threat. You have to think about this, right? But if we go home and we check and we're like, oh, it was off all the time, then those thoughts are going to automatically stop. Like we're no longer have any thoughts about the oven or worry about it. How did we get there? Did we manage to stop the thoughts or fight them off or get rid of them? No, we just saw that there was no threat, there was no danger. So I think that is if I would choose like one biggest key, it would just be this one: see that there is nothing that requires worry, thinking, that there is no problem in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my favorite analogy from Alina. And the one I like is like becoming an observer of the process, because sometimes or at least when I came to realization that I really don't have to engage with my thoughts, that I don't have to like really scrutinize them, I don't have to chew on them, that they are just product of my scared brain. It's with this understanding, it's much easier like to step away from them. And sometimes I basically realize that my brain needs to do this. My brain needs to catastrophize. My brain just needs to send me this awful anxiety, and has to send me this really sadness or depressive feelings, right? So, and when I allow that to happen, when I stop fighting it, when I didn't criticize myself, oh, I shouldn't feel this way or that way, when I just allow that to happen, I have realized that they stay much shorter time than, and they don't spiral me down. I every anxiety, like every emotion, has its beginning, its peak, and its end. So when we just observe these, when we just let our brain do what it needs to do in a given moment, this is when the struggle fades away. Right, so we are at the end of our Q&A today. It was really wonderful. Thank you, Daniel, for your insights. Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful questions. I will see you next time, Daniel, and I'll be back with one of the other coaches next week. Bye-bye. Thank you so much, everybody.